Hey, progressives, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Clip I wanted to play as a lead into our next guest, is really one that I looked at this weekend. I said this will be perfect as part of the conversation with our good friend Mike Nellis. Representative Brian Schatz talking about Trump and the economy.
And you are on the edge of retirement, and let's say you've got $312,000 plus your Social Security income. You just lost 30 grand in 2 days because of Donald Trump. Because of Donald Trump, you lost 10% of what you earned over a lifetime. Now, for Howard Lutnick and Elon Musk and Donald Trump and everybody that surrounds him at Mar-a-Lago, they can ride this out. They can short it, they can buy crypto, they can do all kinds of wonderful things to make sure that they can ride this out. Regular people cannot ride this out. The dollar hit a 6-month low. Layoffs have already started. Consumers are cutting back on spending. And by the way, the data is there, but also just talk to anybody. Just talk to anybody about how they feel about spending right now. And the likelihood of a recession went up 20% in a day. JP Morgan now says it's more than 60% likely. So what is this even for? Why are people so freaked out? Why is the entire world, from friends and partners to adversaries and enemies, scrambling to retaliate against the United States, the indispensable nation? It's so that Donald Trump can raise trillions of dollars in revenue to pay for the biggest tax cuts for billionaires in the history of the planet. Starting tomorrow, we'll be paying more for everything: groceries, food, cars, homes, toys, electronics, everything that you buy. Estimates have home prices ballooning by almost $20,000 per unit. Cars will cost $6,000 more. An iPhone, $250 more. Clothing prices will go up by roughly 20%. Also, what? We're gonna be a textile manufacturer? That's our goal as a country, is to make T-shirts and socks?
Yeah. So I thought it would be great to have that clip from Representative Brian Schatz this morning to his point, that his points, I should say, are not hyperbolic. They're somewhat database, and we've got a very strong database person as our guest this morning, none other than Mike Nellis. Good morning, Mike. How are you this morning?
About yourself?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm sure that you have some thoughts and comments about that. But before we get there, the last time we talked, you were getting over a little bit. You didn't have a cold. Did you have RSV? I'm putting your business out in the street.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you feeling, man? You doing better?
I'm feeling much better. I got an inhaler, so I was walking around, looked super cool with it. But it cleared my lungs up real quick, and I'm doing okay.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I had that in my brain. I was like, I hadn't talked to you in a bit, but I'm glad you're on the mend, doing better. So dive in, man. I mean, you heard the clip, and Representative Schatz had a lot to say, and he had a lot more to say in that, but we wanted to keep it tight. What say you where we are? In the last, since going back to Wednesday night, we've seen some financial carnage like we haven't seen in decades. What are your observations?
Well, I think Senator Schatz got it largely right. But here's the thing: we've never seen an American president intentionally tank the economy before. We've just never seen it before, and it's alarming to me that Donald Trump was effectively elected to lower grocery prices, make housing more affordable. These are the things that he promised to do on day one. I knew he was full of it. You knew he was full of it. But, I can understand where the American people are going. I'm struggling to put food on the table. I'm struggling to start a family. I'm struggling to retire with dignity. And that guy, I think he can help me because right now the Democrats aren't doing enough. I can understand that. What I cannot understand is the callousness of, and frankly, the stupidity of this plan. Let's just be really honest. This is a really stupid plan. It has been poorly articulated to the American people, and maybe we could look, Donald Trump is really good, in my opinion, at articulating actual systemic problems that exist in America today. He is correct that we're getting screwed on trade, we're getting screwed in tariffs, and that is right. The wrong way to go about it is to isolate ourselves completely from the rest of the world, try to punish everybody because now we have no leverage. We have zero leverage in this. Maybe a tariff war works if we have allies, and maybe it works if you do it in a smarter, more organized way. But doing it this way, where you're just putting, blanket 30% tariffs or whatever on every nation, all that's going to do is drive up costs on American consumers who are already struggling. All that's going to do is send people running for the hills, which is what we're going to see in the stock market today. And we're going to watch people get laid off. We're going to watch people struggle to buy a house. We're going to watch people struggle to put food on the table. And people's lives are going to be ruined right now. People's lives in America right now. And he's not going to bring a single manufacturing job back to the United States. And even if he does bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States, let's say he can convince people to build, and I'm sorry for ranting too long, but if he can convince people to build manufacturing plants, which will take 5 years to build and set up manufacturing plants, within that 5-year period, the advancements in AI and robotics is going to eliminate the need for humans to build iPhones and cars and other widgets. And so he has not thought through this plan at all. And don't get me wrong, working in a factory is noble work. We should not be looking down our nose. I've never done it, but I'm not going to look down my nose at anybody who's putting in a hard day's work. But this is not a plan that is going to deliver greatness to the American people. It's just not. It's ridiculous.
When you go back, I mean, and you're young enough. I'm going to put it this way: you're young enough.
Well, I'm not so young anymore.
And I'm
aged a lifetime in the last 90 days.
And I'm old enough to remember the promise of the Reagan administration that they were going to fix everything, that we were going to bring, but at the same time, they were advocates for tearing down unions, tearing down, to your point about that good, hard work, middle class, middle America way of being. So in the same moment that they were saying they were going to do these things and make things better, they were tearing down the support systems that were needed to actually make them better. And that's what Trump is doing. This is Reagan 2.0 in some ways, or 3.0, because the promise to do certain things is without the foresight and the planning to be able to actually execute them. And I like the way, and by the way, this is my show is Rant Central for people who need to get it out. I've said that many times. Eric has said that when we've been on the family meeting about it's the place to get it out, because then you can clear the deck and get stuff done. Talk about a prescribed burn. But Mike, listen, man, that's where we are. Once again, we've elected folks who are perceived by the community, the public, as being smart enough to get the job done, but not actually thoughtful enough and planners enough to see it through and know that there are other things happening. And to your point about AI impacting a 5-year window to build a factory that would then take up space and time, it shows that there's been no planning in this. It's all reactionary, and it's a lot of hyperbolic. Hey, we're going to make your life better, but how are we going to actually do it? And the Trump administration is very much like the Reagan administration. They spoke a good game, but they don't have the capacity to actually get some things done. And here we are again with a market that's going to be all, vomiting all over itself yet again today. I mean, you see it, and you know that people are going to be highly not going to be. You and I both should clean that up in our language. They're not going to be hurt. They're hurting right now.
Yep. And look, I'll actually push back on something that you said. I don't think that Donald Trump talks a good game, because at least Ronald Reagan was able to communicate what he was trying to accomplish. Donald Trump had a rambling, incoherent press conference on Thursday, and then immediately left and has been at a golf tournament for the last 3 days that he hosted. And by the way, big news, everybody, Donald Trump won his own golf tournament again for the 30th time. So this is a man who doesn't understand what he's doing. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just interjecting. Sorry. I was going to say he should tee it up with me and see how that turns out. Anyhow, go ahead, man. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mike.
Listen, I saw his golf swing, and I'm a terrible golfer, but I actually think I might be better than him. So, but I don't have billions of dollars and sycophants help me win a tournament. But look, to me, it's a very simple proposition. For basically my entire lifetime, I'm about 40 years old, the economy has been fundamentally broken, and regular people have been struggling. Like these generation of kids under 30, they're going to be the first generation to do worse off than their parents at the same age. So I understand young people being frustrated and saying, I'm having a tough time finding a job. I don't know a path how to buy a house. I don't know how to start a family. I don't know how to retire with dignity. And then meanwhile, everything's getting more expensive, and the folks at the top are doing really, really well. And basically everybody else, the other 95% of Americans, 99% of Americans are not doing well. And again, what Trump is great at is taking legitimate fears and critiques of the system that are real and that our conventional politicians on the Democratic and Republican Party don't talk enough about, probably because they have a stake in it themselves. And he twists that. And what he's done is build a government that more than ever before only works for a small handful of corrupt billionaires. Because, and Senator Schatz said this, Donald Trump's going to do very well in the market today. Okay, Howard Lutnick is going to do very well in the market today. And anybody who has a ton of capital can ride out whatever the next week, month, years looks like and be able to probably double, triple the amount of money they're going to make in the market. But if you have spent your life saving $300,000, $400,000, and that's the sum of your life as a middle-class person who has worked 30, 40 years in whether it's in a factory or a government job or an office job, whatever it is, whatever you save, you're going to lose you've already lost 10%, 12% of it.
Yeah.
And you're going to lose another 20% today, potentially. It's going to be that bad.
Too many people. Listen, the word I wrote down, and I write this down often, is the word responsibility. And so a 30-year-old, and this is not me, this is kind of me not pushing back, but just sort of adding some flavor to that. A 30-year-old or a 60-year-old is capable of reading and understanding and listening, and should be able to think in a prudent manner. And so when I hear that, we know that the Trump message got to people about certain things, but they're also failing in their responsibility to do the research and to do the work and to make sure that what's being talked about, what's being presented to them by any politician or any person, any business leader, makes some actual sense. And that to me is a failing of how our society has become so not dependent on education. And yeah, I know for a fact that it's not because I'm African American or because I'm a progressive liberal Democrat that I knew a year or 2, 10 years ago that this was all garbage coming from Trump. So I can't yield to the fact or yield to the conversation that someone my age or someone that's 20 or 30 years younger than me doesn't have access to the same information. It's a question of discernment and responsibility. And I think a lot of people have leaned into it's the politician's fault for not saying the message differently or more broadly and not taking some responsibility. I really believe that. And I look at it and say, okay, but you're supposedly a smart person. What happened? Do you know what I mean? And that is life experience telling me some folks got to take responsibility for their actions and not just let it be leaned into. Politicians and business leaders are the ones that bamboozled you. You let yourself get bamboozled.
Well, this is where you and I maybe, and I don't know that we're that far away, but I differ in the way that I talk about this a little bit. Because the first thing is, as a practitioner in the political space where I have to deal functionally at work with the wins and losses, I tend to try to take radical responsibility for everything that happens on the campaigns that I work on, right? And so I ask myself, what could I have done differently? What could I have done better? And I spend a lot of time thinking about how our political leaders, Democratic and Republican, have not delivered for people. They just have not. And they have not been honest with people about what's happening in this country and the direction that we're moving. And I think it has allowed a person like Donald Trump, who has perceived authenticity, to worm his way in like a monorail salesman and start to sell everything off so that he can make more money because he's a huckster and a con artist. But the system and the politicians who built that system and propped it up have allowed him to succeed. And you talked about this, and there's a lot of people who talk about it is, people should do their own research. People should have the skills to do that. But I tend to think about it, and this is the way I frame it to my clients a lot of the time. Think about the median voter for a second. Okay, the median voter in Wisconsin is likely to be a single parent working a couple of jobs, trying to put food on the table, is struggling to survive, is lucky if at the end of a long work week they can watch the Wisconsin Badgers and drink a beer and just blow off a little steam with their friends. And the idea that, and Richard, I don't know you. I don't know your resume. I'm going to assume we're both probably highly educated, relatively, doing well, liberals. there's a difference between like the amount of information that we consume and the way we consume it and the way that an average person does. And it doesn't mean that they're dumb. It doesn't. I just think it's that they have different circumstances to their life, and the expectation that they're going to be able to do the same type of research or have the same type of knowledge that we do is I think wrong and off kilter to me. And so median voter,
and that's that. This is where we see the world. We see the outcome that we want to be similar. I think it's a question of approach, because if we're going to put responsibility in the laps of the politicians to do better and say better and all that, I get that. I'm not taking them off the hook. I'm saying it has to be both sides, or both entities have to be more responsible. And I'll give you the example. I'm not going to ever pass judgment on that guy, that gal that works a double shift and two double shifts, two jobs, two double shifts, if that's humanly possible. I'm not saying that it's their fault. I'm taking the word fault out of the equation and putting responsibility on, because I do think that responsibility is for those who are elected, and I think it's for those who are in the system, those of us who are regular everyday folks. Because if we can say, and as a strategist, what I would add to that, rather than take away from what you're saying, Mike, is I think it's both. It has to be both, because we've had too many years of people that have leaned into, well, I didn't know any better. And I'm sorry, but you don't get to complain about the scenario without being a participant and learning more about the scenario. I'm not that guy. I believe that we have to be willing to say that guy or that gal who's a middle-class working American that's struggling and all that, it's not their fault, but it is their responsibility to be plugged in, because we have too many sources for them to be plugged in. At the same time, Mike, and this is where your strategist strength comes in, we do have to do a better job from the elected politician running side to get them to speak more to that person. And I'm not going to deny that either side of the political spectrum could be doing a better job of it, but I don't care what the Republicans are doing. I only care what the Democrats are doing and want them to do a better job. Does that make sense?
Right. No, it does, and I don't disagree with you. I just spend a lot of time thinking about, and there are a ton of voters like this. They voted for Obama in 2008, and they voted for Obama in 2012, and then they voted for Trump in 2016, and then they voted for Biden in 2020, and then they went back to Trump in 2024. That is a profile of a voter who is desperate for change and who is struggling to survive and isn't able to figure out which party is going to help them. And
but if they didn't vote for but Mike, if they didn't vote for Trump in 2020, there was a reason that they didn't vote for him, and that was because Biden and Harris were going to do a better job. So to then not vote for the people, the system, the group that was doing a better job, to vote for the guy that failed you the time before, that doesn't make any sense. That's where the responsibility of the voter, irrespective of statistics and research, you got to stop and go, wait a minute, hold on a second. This guy I didn't vote for last time because he failed me. I'm going to vote for him again because these people failed me greater? The Biden-Harris administration didn't fail the American people greater than Trump did in his 4 years. That's a fact.
So I think that we can say that that's a fact. I think that was something that you and I agree on, but I don't think it's something that the broader American people believe on. And I think we have to acknowledge the fact that Joe Biden's approval rating out the door was about as bad as George W. Bush's out the door in 2008. It was bad. And again, I love Joe Biden. I think he did a lot more right than he did wrong. I think they made a lot of political mistakes, and I think his age caught up to him in a way that made it harder for him to communicate.
How does a person get to? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, because I'm going to get there. I think I know the question you're going to ask me. Like, how does a person get to, okay, I'm mad at Joe Biden, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump? Because Andrew Yang, of all people, actually had this quote shortly after the election, and people made fun of him, but I think it's right. If you give people two choices, they're going to pick one, even if the two choices are crappy choices. And so always, and this is just basic fundamental political science and theory, people are going to vote out the party in power when they're mad. Always. And we were the party in power. We were the party that was defending the system. We were the party that was in charge. And so they turned to a madman because that was the only other option that they had. Yeah, and that's continue with what I like now that isn't working, or I go back to a madman, and at least with the madman, I have a chance of change. And I understand that. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it at all, but I understand it from a median voter perspective.
I agree with you. And, well, let me say this. It's not that we disagree. It's, and I don't want to get into that philosophical part of it. I want to get down to the brass tacks. People made a bad decision.
It's also okay if we disagree.
No. And trust me, I can be highly disagreeable, but the point is, it's to what end? And I think that for all of us to say that, to go back and vote for the madmen, there's a dysfunction in the people to make the decision to do that. Because if they're trying to find a way out, and just break it down, they voted no for the madman and said, I can't do that this time. And mathematically, this is where I say the responsibility in large part. Yeah, we can throw the media into this in another conversation, but we also have to throw in the responsibility of the citizens and the voters, because they said the madman didn't work for me. I'm going to do something different. Now I'm going to go back to the madman. There's a little bit of craziness in that. There's a little bit, and that's not the fault of the politicians. That's the lack of responsibility and cogency of Americans. And I'll be honest with you, if that wasn't true, let's just break it down in terms of cultural demographics. Black folks did not change this last election. White American voters did. You know the numbers. The peel off of the few black men and Hispanic men isn't what really made the difference in this election.
Oh, I would actually disagree with you there.
You think that white women voters staying at mid-50s didn't have a major impact?
Well, here's the way I would frame it. Like, Trump was able to win a second term with a different coalition that elected him in 2016. We lost because we lost a ton of voters amongst Gen Z voters. We lost a ton of voters amongst Hispanic men and black men. And we also had erosion in black women. Now, not a ton, but we still had that erosion. Kamala Harris did better with white men than Joe Biden and Barack Obama, just by a percentage point, not by a ton, but just by a little bit. She gained with white men and lost with other communities. And so the Democratic Party has to look in the mirror and go, hey, we've been taking advantage of some of these margins we get with communities of color. And that's why we lost, because we lost that erosion. I mean, Donald Trump has gaslit everybody into believing that he had like a giant, massive win. He won by like 180,000 votes in 3 swing states. It was that close.
But who's furthered his message about the gaslighting? Who furthered his message what entity furthered the message about the gaslighting?
I'm sorry, say that again. You're breaking up a little bit.
What entity in our country forwarded the message, strengthened the message of the gaslighting?
What entity is pushing the message of the gaslighting?
Right.
Right. I mean, it's Donald Trump. I mean, Trump and the Republican Party and the right wing have spent
the mainstream media did not do their job.
I think the mainstream media played along in that, but I think we also have to stop relying on the mainstream media to do our jobs for us, because they're not very good.
And that's where I go back to say personal responsibility. You can't get away from that. There's no way a 30-year-old person with a college degree can get away responsibly from their responsibility. There's no way. I'm never going to believe that and go, well, because the Democratic Party didn't do a good enough job of reaching out to that group of people, but they said, I'm going to vote for the madman again. There's just no way a person that's thinking with all of their brain power, whether they're 32 or 62, can go, I'm going to go back to that, unless there's something dysfunctional or such a huge dissatisfaction that they are willing to risk it all. And the numbers today in the market are going to bear that out. They chose to roll the dice when it was right in front of them, Mike. It was right in front of people.
But keep in mind, and you just said something interesting to me, which is like, someone who has a college degree should be able to make the same, determinations that I did, or should be able to get to do the same fact checking that I did. We're actually at a point where, let's just focus on Gen Z, folks under 30 right now. There is a degradation in the number of people who are going to college because they financially and economically can't afford it, and the loan payments are so horrible that people are avoiding doing it. And right now, it's having a disproportionate impact on young men than young women. For every 2 women that are graduating from college right now, we're only graduating 1 man. And so we have this ascent of women, which is good, and we shouldn't do anything to get in the way of that. But we're failing young men. And so then young men get caught up in this realm of like, I can't afford to go to college. I can't get a good job. I don't know how to get a mate. And then they start going down this rabbit hole of Joe Rogan and Andrew Tate and these horrible right-wing influencers, which immediately gets them into right-wing politics. So like a generational failure from the Democratic and Republican establishment has let down all of these young men. And so now they're moving towards this, horrible version of masculinity. They're moving towards this horrible version of our politics. And like, if you want to get back to a place where there's some rationality and commonality in our politics, and I know we've gotten like way off of talking about tariffs now, we're just talking about the root cause of some of this stuff. But, we have to bring a lot of young men back into the fold and make them feel like they have a stake in the society as it exists today.
Well, I would stop you there. I would stop you there to say we have to bring a lot of young people in, because what you just said is part of the reason that there can be a disconnect. I mean, realistically, we got to wrap up the show, and that's why we have you on. It's young voters, period, because young men have to be. We can't just treat young men like, okay, they're the next. We've got to treat them differently or more special than young women. That's where we go wrong with messaging and thought process about the future. We got to treat all the people with the understanding that they've got a stake in this. I just believe that, and if we don't, that's where we miss so oftentimes, is that we go after these segmented groups rather than saying it's got to be a universal message, and inside of that message, tariffs are going to hurt you.
Well, and forget the message for a second. We actually have to deliver for people, because my chief critique of the Democratic Party right now, and an establishment that I am a card-carrying member of and as guilty as anyone of, we've spent, like you just talked about, making everybody feel special, making everybody feel like they have a stake in this. We've spent a lot of time doing that with historically disenfranchised communities, and there's nothing wrong with that. We should keep doing that. We should. Okay, women, communities of color, LGBTQ, et cetera. But we have not done a good job of putting a seat at the table for white men. And every single election that I've ever worked, I can hear myself getting played out. Every single election, we wonder why we lose them. It's because we have nothing to offer them, and we need to start offering them something. We want them to be part of the coalition.
I think the reality is they've been offered something all along, so they need to understand what they've been offered and maximize it. So, Mike Nellis, always good to have you. Good to have the conversation. Thanks for being with us this morning. Guys, we're going to wrap up the show. Mike, thanks for being with us. We'll talk with you soon.